There was still lipstick on the rim of her coffee mug when I threw it in the trash. Not a dramatic toss. Not some loud, shattering declaration. Just a slow, careful drop into the bin, like laying something dead to rest. She always drank hazelnut roast in the mornings, extra sweet, 2 sugars, and almond milk. The same routine for years. But that morning, I stared at that half-finished mug and realized I had no idea who it even belonged to anymore. She hadn't looked at me in days. Not really looked. She walked past me like I was furniture. Something convenient, stable, dusty. Her smile was reserved now for texts I wasn't allowed to see, for people she suddenly had plans with, for some world she built without me. And still, I made her coffee. Like a fool. Then yesterday, the punch landed. A simple sentence, so clean and practiced it felt rehearsed. Making you happy isn't my job. She said it while tying her hair, not even glancing at me. Like she was reciting a line from some bitter play. I didn't answer. I just sat there, blinking at her back, wondering when exactly my presence had become background noise. So this morning, I didn't ask what she wanted in her cup. I poured the last of the hazelnut roast into the sink. And when I dropped her favorite mug, the one with the tiny heart-shaped chip on the handle, into the trash, something inside me finally snapped into place. I was done. Not angry. Not screaming. Not hurling accusations. Just done. Later, when she came downstairs and saw there was no coffee waiting, she didn't ask why. Of course she didn't. She didn't even look at the empty counter. She grabbed her keys, smiled at her reflection, checked her phone, and left. That was the moment I understood. She wasn't wondering if I'd stopped caring. She was counting on it. But she had no idea what life would feel like when I finally did. She left her coat draped across the dining room chair again. Same one she'd worn the night she came home late and claimed she'd been at a networking mixer. I'd asked her why she didn't text me. She shrugged. Didn't think you'd care. At the time, I said nothing. But I noticed the unfamiliar scent clinging to that coat. Something woodsy. Musky. Not hers. Not mine. I remember staring at it like it was evidence from a crime I hadn't seen but could feel in my bones. And now, there it was again sprawled across the chair, daring me to notice it. So I left it there. For hours. Overnight. Like a test neither of us acknowledged. She didn't move it. I didn't move it. We just walked around it, like it wasn't proof of anything at all. The silence between us had turned into a third occupant of the house. It had a weight. A shape. It followed us from room to room, watching how little we touched, how little we spoke. And in that silence, I noticed things. Small, disturbing things. A second toothbrush appeared in the downstairs bathroom. One I never bought. Razor stubble in the sink, thicker, darker than mine. A wine glass drying beside the sink when I hadn't had wine in days. Her laptop screen left open just long enough for me to see an email subject line. Last night was perfect. Perfect for who? I didn't confront her. Not because I was afraid, but because I wasn't ready to hear her confirm what I already knew. That everything I'd been holding on to was already gone, packed away in someone else's car, someone else's bed, someone else's arms. She was seeing someone. And I was invisible. She still kissed me goodbye some mornings. Lightly. Out of habit. But not like someone who was coming back to me. More like someone saying goodbye to a pet before a long weekend. And then 2 days ago, she left her phone on the couch. Unlocked. I didn't mean to look. I swear. But it buzzed, and I glanced down, and there it was. A message preview. He has no idea. LOL. Honestly, I'm starting to think he doesn't even care anymore. Makes it easier. That last line hit me like a slap. Not because it was untrue, but because she'd turned my numbness into permission. She thought I didn't care. That I was too spineless to say anything. Too blind to see what was in front of me. But I saw everything. I saw the way she flinched when I touched her shoulder. I saw the way she lit up for every call that wasn't mine. I saw the way she wore guilt like perfume, always faint, always fading, but always there. She thought I didn't care? She was wrong. I cared too much. For too long. But now I was collecting pieces. Quietly. Carefully. Not to win her back. But to show her what it looks like when the man she took for granted finally chooses himself. And when that moment comes, when she finally realizes the coffee isn't coming, the coat's been donated, the silence isn't passive, it'll be too late. Because I'll already be gone. And this time, she'll be the one staring at an empty chair, wondering how someone disappears while standing right in front of you. That night, I couldn't sleep again. Not because of noise. Not because of a bad dream. Because of a smell. She had lit one of her favorite candles downstairs before going to bed. Lavender cedar. The one she always used when she wanted to set the mood. Only this time, the mood wasn't for me. I stood at the top of the stairs in the dark, watching that flickering light from the living room spill softly across the floorboards. She'd gone to bed an hour earlier, claiming exhaustion. Yet the candle still burned. The couch cushions were shifted. One of the throw blankets was bunched up, like someone had sat there recently. Or someone else had. I walked down quietly, almost afraid of catching someone who shouldn't be there. But the room was empty. Still, something didn't feel right. The wine bottle was half full, but there were 2 glasses. One was bone dry. The other still had a lipstick stain. I touched the rim. Still warm. I checked the back door. Unlocked. I checked the side gate. A shoe print in the mud. Size 11, maybe 12. Definitely not mine. I stood there in the cold, staring at that print for longer than I care to admit, heart thudding, jaw clenched. My hands were trembling, but not from rage. From reality. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. And that made it worse. The casualness of it. The laziness. It wasn't some dramatic affair filled with secrecy and guilt. It was routine now. Like I was the one sneaking around by existing. Like I was the disruption in her new, curated world. When I went back inside, I didn't blow out the candle. I sat on the couch and waited. Not for her. For the feeling to pass. But it didn't. I just sat there with that stupid lavender cedar dancing around me, trying to remember the last time she asked me how I was doing. I couldn't. Then something even worse occurred to me. I couldn't remember the last time I asked her, either. This thing between us, it didn't just die overnight. It was murdered slowly, with every ignored moment, every buried emotion, every night we chose silence instead of honesty. I pulled my phone out and opened a blank document. I didn't know what I was writing at first. It just started pouring out. The first line? I used to believe love was maintenance. I wrote until the sun came up. Paragraph after paragraph. Not a letter to her, no. A letter to myself. Like carving my name into the wood of a life I'd been erased from. And by the time I finished, I realized I wasn't heartbroken. I was free. Not the triumphant, heroic kind of freedom. The quiet, terrifying kind. The kind that sits beside you at dawn and says, "So, what now?" I heard her footsteps upstairs. I didn't hide what I was doing. I didn't even close the document. She came down in her robe, rubbed her eyes, and barely acknowledged me. "Why are you up?" I looked at her, really looked, and I felt something unexpected. Pity. Because she thought she was winning. She thought she had me exactly where she wanted me. Silent, soft, spineless. But she had no idea that the man who made her coffee, folded her towels, and forgave her without asking, he was already fading. I would vanish soon. Not in the night. Not in a fight. But in the stillness she mistook for weakness. And when I left, truly left, she wouldn't find a note. She'd find the house exactly as she left it. Just without me in it. I started using the guest bathroom. Not out of spite. Out of instinct. Ours used to feel shared. Now it felt claimed. Her hair straightener was always plugged in, cords tangling like vines across the counter. New perfumes I didn't recognize sat lined up on the windowsill. Lipsticks, 2 shades darker than she ever used to wear, marked her territory like flags on conquered ground. One morning, I brushed my teeth in the spare bathroom. That little one we never used unless guests were over. The mirror in there was old, slightly warped, like it didn't want to reflect back too much detail. But that morning, it told me the truth. I looked tired. Hollow, even. Like I'd aged 5 years and 5 weeks. My eyes didn't look sad anymore. They looked blank. Not dead, just distant. Like someone watching the world from behind glass. It was strange, because I hadn't cried. Not once. Not even when I found that receipt tucked in her coat pocket last week. The one from a boutique hotel 2 towns over. 1 room. 1 night. Paid in cash. I'd run my fingers over the paper like it might tell me something more, but it was silent. Like me. I didn't confront her. Again. I told myself it was better to observe than to accuse. That proof was more powerful than pain. But the truth is, I didn't want to hear her voice twist itself into another lie. I didn't want to watch her destroy whatever slivers of reality I still clung to. So I started a quiet project. Each day, after she left, I'd pack something small of mine into the storage unit I'd rented across town. Not much. Just pieces. 1 framed photo. 1 favorite sweater. My signed copy of East of Eden. My tools from the garage. My late father's watch. She never noticed. Not once did she ask where things were going. I even took down the painting I bought on our honeymoon. This crooked little watercolor of a cliffside chapel in Maine. She used to say it looked lonely but brave. Now it was just gone, and she didn't flinch. The detachment chilled me more than any affair could. Affairs are driven by desire or dysfunction. But this was apathy, pure and empty, like I wasn't worth remembering. But here's where things shifted. Last Thursday, I came home early from work. Just felt like I couldn't sit at my desk one more minute. My head was buzzing. I didn't text her. I didn't announce it. When I stepped through the front door, I heard music. Upstairs. Something soft and rhythmic. Low enough that it clearly wasn't meant for me to hear. I moved slowly, stepping lightly. And then, as I turned into the hallway, I heard it. Her voice. Laughing. Then silence. Then the unmistakable sound of fabric shifting. Not harsh, not fast, just close. Like two people moving around each other. My heart didn't race. It sank. I didn't go in. I didn't knock. I just stepped backward, down the stairs, and left. I drove around for 2 hours with the windows down, no destination. No music. Just wind and the humming of a brain that had finally stopped asking, why, and started whispering soon. Because now I knew. She wasn't waiting for me to explode. She was waiting for me to leave. And soon, sooner than she thought, I would. But not the way she expected. No yelling. No storming out. Just a slow, surgical removal of myself from the story she thought I'd never stop reading. And when I do leave, she'll go looking for me in all the wrong places. But I'll be already living a chapter she'll never get to read. The plan had never been revenge. I'm not that kind of man. I wasn't trying to trap her or hurt her. I just wanted out without causing a storm. But even quiet exits come with unexpected thunder. The turning point arrived on a Monday. Dreary, bone cold. The kind of gray day where headlights feel too bright and the world looks waterlogged. I was in the break room at work, microwaving leftover chicken stew, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Voicemail. I almost deleted it. But something told me to listen. Not curiosity, instinct. The voice on the other end was unmistakable. Jolene. Except she hadn't meant to call me. The message was only 34 seconds long, but it shifted everything. At first, it was just background noise. Muffled. Her laughing. A man's voice saying something about him being clueless. Then her voice, clearer than I'd ever heard in weeks. He doesn't ask questions because he already knows. I can see it in his eyes. I think he's just waiting for the right moment to disappear. Then a pause. Then she said something that hit harder than every lie she ever told me. And honestly, that would make everything easier. Click. I stood frozen, my hand still hovering above the microwave as it beeped. I didn't eat lunch that day. I didn't go back to my desk. I walked out of the building, past my car, down the street, until I reached a bench in front of an old used bookstore that had a flickering neon open sign in the window. And I sat. For an hour. I played the voicemail again and again. Not because I couldn't believe it, because I could. That was the worst part. It felt inevitable. She wasn't afraid of me finding out. She was tired of pretending she cared that I had. She didn't want to fight. She wanted me to do her the favor of vanishing. And in that moment, something in me, some old, rusted bolt I'd clung to out of fear, finally gave way. I walked into that bookstore, still numb, and bought a single book. A notebook. Leather-bound. Empty. I named it Exit Manual. That night, while she took a shower, singing to herself like there wasn't another man in her voicemail, I began writing it. Not a list of grievances. Not a breakup letter. A blueprint. A plan. First entry, move funds. Quietly, I opened a new bank account under my name only and began diverting my direct deposit, bit by bit. Second entry, separate bills. Cancel joint credit cards. Switch utilities. Establish a clean paper trail. Third, find a temporary place. Something simple. Short-term lease. Month to month. The kind of place no one thinks to look for someone who's rebuilding. Fourth, the hardest one. Collect evidence. Not for a confrontation, but for protection. In case she turned this story into something it wasn't later. I started taking photos. Screenshots. Saving messages. I stored everything in a password-protected drive labeled rental contracts. I didn't want to humiliate her. I wanted insurance. Meanwhile, I remained quiet. I cooked dinner twice that week. I laughed politely when she told me some joke about a coworker. I even picked up her dry cleaning. And she smiled. Like I was finally slipping into the role she wanted. The ghost of a husband who didn't make noise when he faded. But ghosts remember. And mine was writing everything down. What she didn't realize, what made all of this so much darker, was that by pushing me into silence, she'd given me the power to leave without warning. No accusations, no tears, no second chances. Just one morning where she'd reach for a mug of hazelnut coffee that wasn't there and realize neither was I. And maybe then, she'd check her voicemail again and finally hear what she accidentally confessed. Too late. It was never about catching her. It was about understanding just how much of myself I had lost while trying to preserve something that had already rotted from the inside out. That became painfully clear the night I found the photo, tucked behind the old kitchen clock, of all places. I'd taken the clock down to change the battery. It always ran 2 minutes slow, and Jolene had made a passing remark about how even time feels lazy in this house. I remember holding the clock over the sink, trying to pop off the back panel, when a folded piece of paper slipped out and landed near my feet. It wasn't paper. It was a Polaroid. I picked it up slowly, carefully, like it might bite. It was her, smiling. Not the polite, closed-lip smile I'd been getting lately, but a grin, wide, raw, the kind she used to save for vacations or after a good thunderstorm when we'd sit on the porch. And next to her was a man I'd never seen before, bearded, wearing a faded leather jacket. They were sitting in what looked like a hotel room. His hand was on her knee. The timestamp at the bottom was dated 6 weeks ago. I sat down in the middle of the kitchen floor, still holding the photo, staring at the expressions on their faces. Joy, intimacy, familiarity. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was exhale, like the air had finally given up trying to hold in my denial. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This wasn't reading between the lines. This was confirmation. And yet, part of me still couldn't move. I stayed there, hunched over the linoleum tiles, thinking about how many times I had walked past that clock without ever knowing what it was hiding. That thought stuck with me. Not just the secrecy, but the layers of it. The depth. How many other things had she hidden in plain sight? I went upstairs that night, and she was already in bed, scrolling her phone with a dead-eyed look. She didn't even glance up as I walked in. I stood at the edge of the room, Polaroid still in my pocket, wondering if she'd noticed the weight of it in my silence. She didn't. She asked if I'd remembered to take the trash out. I said yes. She said, "Thanks," without looking at me. And that was it. In that moment, I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt absurdity. I'd spent months spiraling over whether I was losing her when in reality, she'd walked away long ago and just never bothered to shut the door behind her. The next morning, I began the final phase of my plan. I contacted a moving service, told them I'd be vacating a fully furnished rental and needed storage for a few personal items. I paid the deposit using the new account. I marked a date on my calendar, a date 2 weeks away, a Friday, when I knew she had a conference out of town. She wouldn't even know I was gone until 2 days later. But I wasn't just leaving the house. I was leaving the version of myself who believed that loyalty alone could hold a marriage together. That silence was noble. That endurance was the same as love. I still hadn't told anyone. No family. No friends. No messy group chats asking for advice. I needed the silence to stay sharp, clear. I wanted every step to be deliberate, measured. Because when you've been invisible long enough, you learn how to disappear with precision. That evening, I went into the garage and retrieved an old cardboard box labeled winter gear. Inside was a thick sweater I hadn't worn in years, and taped to the inside flap was a note from Jolene, written long ago in faded marker. For when the world feels cold. Jay? I stared at the note for a long time. Then I folded the sweater, pulled the note off, and fed it slowly through the shredder in my office. I wasn't angry. I was ready. Ready to stop wondering who she'd become. Ready to stop proving I deserved to be seen. And most of all, ready to stop pretending that loving someone who didn't love you back was anything close to strength. I cooked dinner that night. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to know how it felt to go through the motions one last time. I made her favorite, lemon garlic pasta with seared scallops, the kind she always requested on her birthday. I even opened a bottle of white wine we'd been saving since our 5th anniversary, the one she insisted we hold on to for something special. She came home late, of course, wearing heels I hadn't seen before. The same scent she always used, soft, floral, but heavier, like she'd applied it twice. She walked into the kitchen, paused at the side of the table, and raised one brow as if suspicious of the effort. "This for something?" she asked, setting her purse down. I smiled. A small one. Just thought we could have a night, I replied. No phones. No distractions. She gave a small nod, almost performative, and sat down. She didn't thank me. She picked up her fork and began to eat without a word. I watched her chew slowly, methodically, like she was checking for poison with every bite. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable, it was clinical. Halfway through the meal, I asked, "Do you remember the last time we made each other laugh?" She glanced up, fork paused in midair. "Excuse me. I mean a real laugh. The kind that makes you fall against the counter because you can't breathe." She blinked, visibly confused by the question. "Why are you asking?" I shrugged. "Just wondering if you miss it." "I do." She set her fork down. "Is this going somewhere?" I stared at her, not with anger, but with genuine curiosity. I wanted to see if she'd lie again, if she'd pivot. But she didn't say anything, just picked up her glass. And then, like a confession hidden in plain sight, she muttered, "People change, Curtis." I nodded. "They do." And right there, in that quiet admission, I saw it. She thought this was control, that I was clinging, that I was too weak to let go. She didn't see the empty spots in the bookshelf, the drawers that were no longer full, the framed pictures that had disappeared from the hallway. She didn't see the luggage packed beneath the guest bed, the moving company receipt hidden inside a hollowed-out novel on my nightstand. She didn't see any of it. She was still playing chess while I was already off the board. After dinner, she went upstairs, mumbling something about a Zoom call in the morning. I stayed behind. I cleaned up, poured the leftover wine down the drain, washed each plate by hand. And then I took the final item from my exit manual. Leave her something honest. Not dramatic. Not bitter. Just honest. I pulled out a note card, the kind I used to leave in her lunch bag when we were first dating, and wrote 9 words. Making you happy was never my job either. Then I tucked it inside the empty wine bottle, resealed the cork, and placed it back in the cabinet. A small, silent time capsule. Something she wouldn't find until months later. Maybe years. Maybe never. But I would know it was there. That night, I didn't sleep in the bedroom. I didn't sleep at all. I sat on the back porch wrapped in an old blanket, watching the wind move through the trees like fingers combing tangled hair. I thought about how quiet it had all become. Not just the house. Me. There was no grief anymore. Just precision. A quiet unfolding of a life once shared. Tomorrow, I would leave. I would take nothing that reminded me of her. No traces of my time there would remain. And the version of me who begged for scraps of affection? He would stay behind. A ghost in her mirror. The morning I left, it rained. Not the cinematic kind of rain. No thunder, no storm, just a soft, steady drizzle that washed over the roof like a whisper. The kind of rain that makes people stay in bed longer, or linger by the window without knowing why. She didn't wake when I got up. She never stirred as I quietly zipped the last duffel bag and placed it by the door. I didn't need to sneak. There was nothing forbidden about what I was doing anymore. I was simply done. No drama. No confrontation. Just a man walking away from a house that once held a life, but no longer held him. Before I left, I stood for a moment at the threshold of our bedroom, her side of the bed still warm, her phone charging on the nightstand. I watched her sleeping face, the one I'd memorized over years of early mornings and late apologies. And in that moment, I didn't hate her. I felt relief. Because I finally understood something that had taken me far too long to accept. It wasn't my job to fix what she broke with silence. It wasn't my job to carry both our hopes. And it definitely wasn't my job to be the only one fighting to be seen. So I turned away. And I walked out. My car was already packed. The movers would arrive later to take the final few things from the storage unit. I'd left no letter on the table. No voicemail. No explanation. Just absence. And that would say more than any words ever could. The apartment I moved into was small. 1 bedroom. No dishwasher. The blinds didn't quite close right. But it was mine. The first thing I unpacked was the notebook I called Exit Manual. And I turned it to a blank page. I wrote, "Start something new. Not to forget, but to remember who I am." And I did. I started cooking again, not for someone else, but because I like the way garlic smells on my hands. I went for walks without looking at my phone. I joined a local book club, even though I hated the first novel we read. The woman who led the discussion had a crooked smile and interrupted herself when she got excited. She asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime. I said yes. Not because I was ready for anything serious, but because I was finally curious about the world again. One afternoon, weeks later, I sat on the floor of my new place with the windows open. Sunlight spilled across the carpet in long, golden ribbons. Milo, our dog, or I suppose now just mine, lay beside me, snoring softly. And I thought, this isn't what I imagined. It's better. Because it's real. Because I am, for the first time in years, not shrinking to fit inside someone else's story. I'm writing my own. And I think, no, I know, there is joy waiting for me on the other side of this silence. Not loud joy, but quiet, steady, undeniable joy. The kind you build with open eyes and an open heart, and the understanding that you are allowed to begin again. So I did. I am. And if she ever wonders what happened to the man who used to make her coffee and fold her sweaters just right, he's gone. But not broken. Just new. And finally, wonderfully free.